A retired school teacher spent 30 years dreaming about her retirement home. She'd researched it, visited it twice on vacation, and finally bought a condo there the year she retired. 18 months later, she put it back on the market and moved somewhere she'd never even considered before. Somewhere she now describes as the best decision she's ever made. What happened in between those 18 months is something every single person planning their retirement needs to hear, because it could happen to you too, and most people don't find out until it's already too late. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly which 10 locations are quietly becoming retirement traps in 2026. Not because they're bad places to live, but because they're bad places to retire on a fixed income, with aging bodies, and with healthcare needs that only grow over time. We're counting down from 10 to 1, and I'll tell you right now, the number 1 spot is going to surprise you, because it's a place most retirees consider the safest, most obvious choice on this entire list, and it punishes some of them even after they've already moved away. Welcome to Settled Living, where we help you avoid the costly mistakes that catch so many retirees off guard. If you're finding this helpful, please like the video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future retirement updates. Let's start the countdown. At number 10, Greenwood, Mississippi. This town offers some of the lowest living costs in the entire country, which on the surface sounds exactly like what a retiree on a fixed income should want. But here's what most retirees don't discover until they've already moved. The local hospital recently laid off 86 employees, ended after-hours care entirely, closed its wellness center, and shut down both outpatient and cardiac rehabilitation services. Picture a retired veteran named Walter, who chose Greenwood specifically because his pension would go further there than almost anywhere else he considered. He didn't anticipate that the very healthcare infrastructure he'd eventually depend on would quietly collapse around him. When his cardiologist's office closed, he found himself driving over an hour each way for basic follow-up care he used to get a few blocks from home. A drive that became harder every winter as his arthritis worsened and the roads grew less forgiving. But the next location may be even more surprising, because the retirees leaving there aren't fleeing a financial problem at all. They're fleeing something that doesn't show up on any spreadsheet. At number 9, New Mexico, particularly the Albuquerque area. This state consistently ranks among the worst in the country for retiree safety, with the second worst overall crime rate nationwide, and violent crime against older adults specifically occurring at one of the highest rates anywhere in America. Picture a retired widow named Diane who moved to a quiet-looking neighborhood outside Albuquerque, drawn in by affordable housing and a beautiful climate. Within her first year, 2 homes on her own street were broken into. Nothing happened to her directly, but the constant low hum of anxiety, checking that her doors were locked twice before bed, feeling uneasy walking to her mailbox after dark, slowly eroded the sense of peace she'd specifically moved there to find. She started declining evening invitations from neighbors, not because she didn't want to go, but because the walk home in the dark had started to feel like a risk she didn't want to take. It took over a year of that quiet erosion before she finally admitted to her son that she didn't feel safe in her own home anymore. At number 8, Hempstead, New York. On paper, this Long Island town doesn't sound alarming, but living costs here run 36% above the national average and 8% higher than the rest of the state. A retired nurse named Carol moved to Hempstead to be close to her daughter's family, assuming her pension and Social Security would stretch the way they had back home. They didn't. Carol found herself dipping into savings every single month just to maintain a lifestyle that felt completely ordinary, not extravagant in any way. She told her daughter it felt like running on a treadmill that kept speeding up, working just as hard but somehow falling further behind every single month. But that's not the biggest problem on this list, and the next location looks like an absolute bargain right up until a single medical emergency changes everything. At number 7, Minnesota. By almost every measure, this is an exceptionally well-run state with excellent health care and consistently low crime rates. And yet it lands near the bottom of national retirement rankings for one simple reason: brutal winters combined with state taxation of Social Security benefits. One of only 8 states left in the country that still taxes it. Picture a retired engineer named Robert who'd lived in Minnesota his entire working life and assumed retirement there would simply continue. What changed wasn't the state, it was his body. Icy sidewalks that never bothered him at 50 became a genuine fall risk at 72. One February morning, he slipped on his own front walkway, reaching for the newspaper. And what should have been a minor stumble turned into a fractured wrist and a 6-week recovery that left him relying on neighbors for groceries he used to fetch himself without a second thought. At number 6, Alaska. This state ranks dead last in most national retirement studies, and it's not close. Groceries cost significantly more due to shipping. Heating a home through the long winters is genuinely expensive. But the factor that surprises people most isn't financial at all. Picture a retired small business owner named Frank who moved to a rural Alaska town, chasing a quiet, self-sufficient lifestyle. What he didn't anticipate was how isolating those long, dark winters would become once his social circle from work disappeared. He described it to his son as feeling like the walls of the world slowly closed in a little more each winter. Now notice something about every single story so far. Walter, Diane, Carol, Robert, Frank. None of these retirees were irresponsible. They saved diligently. They researched their moves. They did exactly what financial experts have told retirees to do for decades: find an affordable place, settle down, enjoy what you've earned. Their mistake wasn't poor planning. Their mistake was making a major life decision with incomplete information. Information that doesn't show up on a real estate listing or a vacation brochure. The kind of information you usually only get after you've already moved in. What surprised you most after retiring? If you're currently living in one of these areas, we'd genuinely love to hear your experience in the comments below. At number 5, Coastal California. The dream here is real. Mild weather, world-class healthcare, endless cultural activity. But the math for a fixed-income retiree has become genuinely brutal. To retire near the coast without major compromise, financial planners now recommend budgeting around $84,000 a year. A median home along the coast runs roughly $780,000, with mid-tier mortgage payments exceeding $5,500 a month in some areas. Picture a retired couple, the Hendersons, who'd lived in Santa Barbara for 20 years and assumed they could simply stay. Without the protection of having purchased decades earlier, their property taxes, utility bills, and grocery costs together consumed nearly 2/3 of their combined retirement income, forcing them to choose between Santa Barbara and the rest of their retirement plan. They sat at their kitchen table one evening and ran the numbers 3 separate times, hoping they'd made a mistake somewhere. They hadn't. They chose to leave. At number 4, Illinois. This one catches people completely off guard because Illinois actually fully exempts Social Security, pensions, and retirement account withdrawals from state income tax, one of the most generous retirement tax treatments in the entire country. It sounds like a retiree's dream, but Illinois also carries the second highest property tax rate in the nation, with the median effective rate sitting near 1.92%. A $400,000 home in a suburb like Naperville can carry an annual property tax bill above $8,500. Picture a retired accountant named Susan who moved to Illinois specifically because of the retirement income exemption, only to discover her property tax bill alone ate up nearly everything she'd saved on income tax and then some. The state gives with one hand and takes with the other. And most retirees only discover which hand is bigger after they've already signed the closing papers. And one state on this list punishes retirees even after they've moved away. We'll get there in a moment. But first, the entry that might generate the most comments on this entire video. At number 3, Florida's coastal condo communities specifically. Not Florida as a whole, but the high-rise and waterfront condo buildings that became so popular with retirees over the past few decades. Following new state safety requirements after tragic building collapses, many condo associations have been hit with massive special assessments to fund structural inspections and repairs. Picture a widowed retiree named Patricia, 74, living alone in a condo near Sarasota after her husband passed away 3 years earlier. For years, her monthly HOA fee had been a manageable few $100s, predictable, simple, exactly what she wanted in a low-maintenance retirement. Then one afternoon, she opened an envelope from her condo association and found a special assessment notice for a structural repair project, a bill in the tens of thousands of dollars, due within a matter of months. She called the HOA office the next morning, certain there had to be some kind of payment plan, some kind of flexibility. There wasn't, not really, just a deadline and a number that felt impossible on her fixed income. She spent the following weeks calling her bank, calling her daughter, calling a financial advisor a friend had recommended, slowly coming to terms with the fact that the only realistic option left was to sell the home she'd planned to live in for the rest of her life. Layer that on top of homeowners insurance premiums that can run $5,000 to $30,000 a year in coastal buildings, and you start to understand why so many condo-owning retirees are quietly looking for the exit, even while new arrivals keep buying in, unaware of what might be waiting in next year's mail. At number 2, Honolulu and the state of Hawaii as a whole. This is the island paradise everyone pictures. White sand, turquoise water, the exact image most people imagine when they think about the perfect place to spend their golden years. It's also consistently ranked the single most expensive state in the country to retire, with the annual cost for a comfortable retirement running over $117,000 a year. A retired contractor named Gerald moved to Honolulu after selling his home in Ohio, expecting his sale proceeds to fund a comfortable island retirement. Gerald didn't notice the problem immediately. The first few months felt exactly like the dream he'd imagined. Morning walks along the beach, outdoor dinners in perfect weather, visits from friends back home who couldn't believe he actually lived in Hawaii now. But gradually, the numbers started changing. A grocery trip that would have cost $80 in Ohio regularly cost $130. Utility bills came in higher than expected. Routine home maintenance carried island pricing, parts and labor both costing more, simply because everything had to travel across the ocean to reach him. None of the increases felt catastrophic on their own. The problem was that every single category seemed to cost more at the same time, quietly, month after month. By the third year, Gerald found himself checking his account balances far more often than he ever had before retirement, watching numbers shrink faster than he'd projected. The paradise hadn't changed. His relationship with money had, and now, the number one spot. This state taxes more, costs more, and in some cases continues auditing retirees long after they've already packed up and moved away, actively investigating whether their relocation was even real. It's not a remote island. It's not a frozen wilderness. It's a place most retirees consider the safest, most obvious, most familiar choice on this entire list, which is exactly why it's so dangerous. Number 1 is downstate New York, including the communities surrounding New York City. New York combines a top income tax rate near 10.9%, with an estate tax and an average effective property tax rate near 1.6%. And unlike many other high-tax states, it offers retirees relatively little shelter from any of it. On $100,000 of retirement income, the combined state and local tax burden here can run more than 3 times what the same income would face in Florida or Tennessee. And here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. According to recent tax authority data, New York actively pursues former residents who claim they've relocated, conducting domicile audits to verify the move was real. That means even retirees who've already left, who've sold their homes and settled hundreds of miles away, are sometimes still being chased for taxes they thought they'd escaped. Picture a retired attorney named Margaret, who spent 40 years building a life and a home on Long Island, always assuming she'd simply stay, as property taxes climbed alongside the general cost of living. And as friends one by one began relocating to North Carolina, Tennessee, and Florida, Margaret found herself increasingly isolated in a state most people assume retirees stay in simply because it's familiar. She eventually moved too. And the version of New York she left behind, the one most people still picture when they think of retiring there, isn't quite the version that exists for retirees living there in 2026. So what does all of this actually mean for you? It doesn't mean avoiding warm climates, expensive cities, or the places you've always pictured for this chapter of your life. It means looking past the brochure. Before you commit to any retirement destination, look specifically at local healthcare infrastructure. Not just whether hospitals exist, but whether they're financially stable. Look at crime data specifically affecting older adults. Add property taxes and HOA assessments into your real budget, not just the headline income tax rate. And factor in how your own body might change over the next 10 or 20 years, even if you feel perfectly capable today. Remember the retired school teacher we talked about at the very beginning, the one who sold her dream condo after only 18 months. Today, several years and one good move later, she says she doesn't regret leaving at all. What she regrets is something quieter than that. She regrets assuming a place was right for her simply because everyone else said it was, because it photographed beautifully, because it matched the picture she'd carried in her head for 30 years. She'd done everything she thought she was supposed to do. She just hadn't asked the right questions before she packed the boxes. If this video helped you think more carefully about your own retirement plans, please like the video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss future retirement updates. Walter, Diane, Carol, Robert, Frank, the Hendersons, Susan, Patricia, Gerald, and Margaret all learned something the hard way that you now get to learn in advance. None of them failed at retirement. They simply discovered, sometimes painfully, that the place that looks perfect from the outside isn't always the place that actually fits a real, day-to-day retired life. Here's the truth worth holding on to as you think about your own plans. The best retirement destination isn't the one everyone else chooses. It isn't the one with the prettiest photos, or the warmest weather, or the lowest advertised cost of living. It's the one that actually matches your finances, your health needs, your tolerance for isolation or crowds, and your own honest version of peace of mind. That's not a discouraging message. It's actually a liberating one, because it means the perfect retirement isn't hiding in some far-off dream location you haven't found yet. It's something you can build deliberately, with clear eyes, wherever that turns out to be. We'll see you in the next one.